What I'm going to do in this video is explain to you what Kundalini is, what a Kundalini awakening looks like, and why it actually matters to you. And then give you kind of some context with my own story, how I came to this topic. Because it does matter. This is a force that is occurring within you right now, and it's awakening something in your body that needs to be dealt with. And so to be able to have a better understanding, have the vocabulary for it, and be able to hear experientially like what someone else went through or is going through is going to help you a lot. It's going to make the transition for yourself much easier and smoother. The Kundalini force is an untapped energy hidden within all humans that actually exists at the base of our spine or root chakra. And when activated, pours through the rest of the body and exits the top of the head and transfigures the entire system. Kundalini force has a lot of synonyms. So you'll hear Kundalini force, you'll hear Shakti, you'll hear Christ energy, creative potential. All of these things are talking about the same phenomena. These have been described in ancient texts for many, many thousands of years. And why it's important today and for humanity to actually understand what is happening is because something is actually changing in the energetic field that's actually causing these Kundalini awakenings to happen faster in humanity. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, of course, we have the Earth, right? And it's turning about its own axis. So this is our daily cycles or circadian rhythms. Then we have lunar cycles, which is the moon rotating about the Earth about once a month or so. And then we have yearly cycles, so the Earth rotating about the sun and being in different places in the actual solar system. And all of these things actually have physiological changes or effects in our bodies. So for instance, when the Earth rotates, you feel different in your body when it is 2 a.m. versus 2 p.m. You feel different when it's summer versus winter time, more sunshine, more, there are plants exuding chemicals into the air, etc. and so forth. Now, it isn't too far of a stretch to claim or to explain that, okay, not only are there yearly cycles, but there are bigger cycles in the solar system too, ones that also change the energetic frequency of it all. And so that's what's going on. There's a cycles called the yugas, and the yugas are about 12,000 years or so. And we are entering into a new yuga, or you can imagine like a new season of sorts. Now, without getting too woo-woo and losing my credentials here, I'll just say that there's been a blockage that it has been manually stopping this new season to come into play on Earth. And now that blockage is getting lifted, so everything that we're seeing here with all the craziness in the world really is because our bodies are changing. It's like jet lag on a plane, right? Like you fly to a new part of the world, like you were in summertime in the United States, but then you flew to wintertime in Australia, and your body gets all out of whack and gets so funky and it affects your mental health and you get really groggy. The same thing is happening on Earth right now. We are going through a transition that's normally slower and smoother that's now happening overnight. It's as though we're getting almost teleported to a new location in the Milky Way, and that new location has different energetic consequences for the body. Now, this energy that exists for humanity right now, it is a literal force of love, like it is the vibration of love. Humanity has been in the vibration of fear, desire, anger, shame, guilt, grief. And if we can allow ourselves to have this energy come in from this higher vibrational state, it transfigures the entire system and can actually change your cellular makeup and give you access to more tools that you didn't used to have. These are psychic abilities. And I know how crazy that sounds, and like I thought it was crazy too. But that's what's happening is there is a very palpable change within the human structure that allows us to access new sensory modalities, new ways to perceive the world. Again, why it matters is because you are waking up. All of us are waking up. There is not one single person on this planet that is not having some sort of spiritual awakening or crisis. It's just that we don't have the language or vocabulary for it. We don't know exactly why it's happening. And so to be able to understand it better can really help us kind of transition more smoothly. So now I'll tell a little bit of my story and how I came to this and what's been happening in my own body over the past few months, years, so that you'll actually get kind of an aspect or an understanding of what what the hell is happening in an individual when they completely succumb and surrender to the experience and say, okay, energy, full throttle, change me. I would say that the whole thing started for me when I was 11 years old or so. It was August 8th, 2008, 8808, and I was at the beach and I broke my collarbone. I was in this inflatable kayak. I got tossed over, rammed into the ocean floor, pop. It was my right shoulder. And I remember, I went to the hospital, got the sling, and then a few weeks after I broke my collarbone, I hit puberty. So growth hormones came in. I started getting bigger, but I grew counterclockwise. My spine grew crooked, so I was like looking down and to the left for about 10 years, and it affected everything from hand-eye coordination to spatial awareness to actual eyesight. So I was wearing glasses at one point, which I no longer do. When I talk about the Kundalini force kind of rerouting and healing our body, I mean that literally. Like, I don't need glasses anymore. You can imagine it like a garden hose of sorts. Like, the spine is this channel for energy to flow through, and it needs to be exactly upright. And so what happened for me when I broke my collarbone, I was twisted down. This entire thing was kinked. I mean, it was squeezed off, like it was no longer accessible to me. And so I became more and more unconscious. And in hindsight, if this hadn't have happened to me, and I was shown in a later experience in ayahuasca that like this 8808 number was significant. There was a reason why this Kundalini awakening was being paused for me so that I could go about my normal everyday life. Because had I started having these Kundalini spiritual psychic experiences when I was 12, 13, on until 20, I certainly would not have gone and done the things that I'd done. So I wouldn't have gone to college. I wouldn't have got my engineering degree. I probably would have moved to the woods or been a part of some community rather than having some sort of foundational understanding of science and math so that I can be more logical, so that I can explain things from a more rational point of view, because that feels like my actual calling here. That feels like what I'm offering the world. So my first spiritual awakening happened on an island in the Great Barrier Reef. I was 20 or so, and I was just miserable. I was so depressed. I was whatever it was, 14-hour time difference from my friends, everything that I was used to. My girlfriend and I were getting in constant fights. And so I remember being in this hotel bed, just curled up in fetal position, sobbing my eyes out, like, what is this all for? None of it matters. I don't give a shit about my major. And then this kookaburra bird, way out there, just, it made this incredible laugh, and all of a sudden there was like a short circuit in my mind where I went, oh, I didn't know there were monkeys on this island, because I didn't know it was a kookaburra bird. And then all of a sudden my mind like turned back on itself, and it said, wait a second, weren't you just really upset? Like, how come you just flipped from misery to curiosity in the blink of an eye? It was me like getting a breath of fresh air and saying, oh my God, I'm making all of this up. Like, my thoughts are not what they seem to be. Anyway, so I walked around that island for the entire day, just barefoot, like the world in Technicolor. Like, I was like, oh my God, there's so much to see here. Fast forward throughout my senior year, things started collapsing in terms of my identity. I was even more miserable, but I was also simultaneously being exposed to books like A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle and a few other spiritual classics, and my life just gets turned. Granted, all of this is happening while simultaneously, I'm still in college, I'm trying to get a job, I'm just confused as hell, existential, I don't care about my major anymore. And that's when I started like meditating and getting more into presence, and things were starting to shift for me. Eventually I do land a job. It's 60-hour work weeks. It's just so much. It's so taxing. And then I took my first acid trip, and all of a sudden I had this this moment where all of a sudden I was in full panoramic, right? So like right now as you're watching, you can kind of take in your peripherals, but there's even this facet where you can flip attention and go backwards and be the actual witness to your experience. I ended up getting a life coach after that because I was like, I need a plan. I can't possibly do this corporate work for the rest of my life. I will go insane. So please help me. We went through a variety of options, but what we came to was, what was bringing me sanity at the time, which was yoga. I would end work and I would run straight to my car and go straight to the yoga studio because it was the only thing that was keeping me calm. Otherwise, I was just abusing weed and alcohol, and those things were no longer helping me. So the idea was just to quit, go get my yoga certification, and then figure it out. So I moved to Montana, got my yoga certification, and I remember that's when I first started getting exposed to these esoteric ideas of Kundalini. Before this, I had never even heard of it. I started learning about things like chakras. And I remember a specific journal entry I wrote saying, I still don't see how these things are not just mental projections. Like, I can of course imagine like a glowing green energy in my heart, but does that make it objectively true? Like, I don't see how this isn't just me psychologically mapping something onto my body that's not really there. I'm much more open these days, but it was a tough sell at the time of like, how can this possibly be true? How can there be more to existence other than what I can see, hear, taste, touch, smell? Then, after the yoga teacher training, kind of left it at that, this open-ended door, I went to a Vipassana retreat. Vipassana is this style of meditation where you scan your body methodically and you're creating sharper and sharper concentration. And so as I'm scanning, things are getting deeper and deeper. All of a sudden, I'm feeling layers to my body that I never felt before. I'm like, oh, there's more here than I realized. And at one point, there was this big bolt of electricity that went through the top of my head and down to the earth. And it was just an instant. It was like 2 seconds. And I was like, okay, all right. Well, I don't know what that was. Fast forward a few months, I go to a music festival. I take another tab of acid. This is a common theme. I don't take psychedelics anymore, but at the time they were very, very helpful for my awakening. So I took it. I'm going about my business, and I feel like this rumbling in my pelvic floor. And it wasn't like a food rumbling. It wasn't anything I had experienced before. It was just like a volcano that I could tell was about to erupt. So I turned to my friend and I really did not understand Kundalini forces at this time, but I turned to him and I said, I think my Kundalini is about to open. I gotta go. I gotta go back to the campsite. So he said, Godspeed. I went back. I sat, half lotus in my tent. I closed my eyes and I said, okay, universe, show me what you got. And what I was shown was just fractal patterns of dicks and vaginas. I mean, it was just like an erotic display of ungodly complexity about genitalia. It was fascinating. It was not what I was expecting. That's not what I thought the Kundalini force. Granted, there are aspects to it, right? The Kundalini force is also this sexual energy in us that gets transmuted and moved throughout the body. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought I was going crazy. I thought it was just drugs. So I put the experience out in a box over here saying, open when the time is ready, because I don't know what that means. I go about my life. A year later, I get exposed to tantric sexuality for the first time. And I take a course called Orgasmic Mastery because I'd had a lot of problems with my own sexual insecurities, premature ejaculation, etc. So I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. The course leader had us do these self-pleasure exercises, meaning masturbation, right? That's just but masturbation kind of has this tint in our mind of negative, like kind of shamefully masturbating before we go to bed. This was like, okay, our life can be so much more pleasurable. Like, life is about joy. Life is about enjoying ourselves. So the idea is like, rather than masturbating in a dark room and then passing out before you go to bed, which is what I mostly did, it was like, let's go out in the open. Let's see what we got going on here. And the promise, or what was on offer, was what he called an implosive orgasm, meaning rather than ejaculating outwards, you ejaculate inwards. And I don't know if it's quite literally a literal ejaculation inside of yourself, but energy will be drawn up, implosive rather than explosive. I think the whole thing was like 6 weeks long, and it was on like week 4 or 5 for me that I had my first implosive orgasm. where everything was drawn in, and I was just thrust into like blue, like this pleasure circuit and waves thrusting through my body. And I was like, what is this? I mean, I sobbed. It was the most, I have never experienced something so pleasurable, like in my life, just by myself. I mean, it really felt like there was this infinite wave going up to my head and just kind of exploding out. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, is that Kundalini? Is that what that is? And when that happened, all of a sudden I could bring context to the experience I had on LSD at the music festival, where I saw that fractal pattern of genitalia. It was the universe giving me a clue as to what was next. It was as though it was saying, okay, you want to open up your Kundalini, deal with yourself first, deal with your sexuality, and then see what happens. I didn't have that experience for another little while until I lived in a cabin in the woods by myself for about 30 days or so. Trying to recreate some of my meditative experiences, trying to get away from everything, turning off the internet, turning off the electricity, and just like, okay, what does Ethan need right now? I'd go about my business, and then day 10, take another tab of acid, do a full lotus, spine up to the sky, and without touching myself, boom, this thing exploded through me, bright white light shattering my ego. All of a sudden, like, there was nothing and everything. It was reverberating off. I talk about this more in an essay that I have called S Month. But it was incredible, and I wasn't touching myself. And that was definitely psychedelic induced. That was definitely LSD induced. But that was day 10. The rest of the days, I started having these experiences where it was like my belly button kind of seize in, and everything would just kind of writhe, and it would feel like I'm throwing up out of the top of my head in these yoga positions. And so whatever was activated in me that can be activated through like sexual power was being activated through hands off. And that's when things started really getting interesting, because it would be like every night, like I'd get back home, I just have these intense waves, and it'd feel like it's just like breaking through barriers in me. I remember I would like relive my collarbone break as a child, like these old wounds were being healed and seen, and it felt like my entire body was being elongated and stretched, and I was like pushing out of this cocoon of sorts, this metamorphosis. I mean, it really felt like caterpillar to butterfly type feelings. And then I started getting past life regressions. I started going back into like this war scene where like I'm riding on a horse, and I get to this village that's been plundered and pillaged. And it was horrendous. Like the things that I saw that I was a part of made me sick. And I thought, I was like, I'm going crazy. Like, what is this? I've never been in war. I've been a bland, vanilla ass white kid in suburbia his whole life that just did the engineering path. What is this war thing going on? I would go to more of Vipassana retreats. I would scan my pelvic floor. There would just be like shame that has been inside of my body since I was born. I mean, I remember I can think of certain images in my head of me as a child just like contracted. Like there seemed to have been no memories of this life that was causing this contraction, and yet it was there. I was like ashamed to be alive. It's been a big hurdle in me. It's like, I deserve to be here. So I'm scanning my body, I'm seeing the pelvic floor, there's a contraction that is not this life-oriented. And then all of a sudden, one day I'm in a normal meditation, and again, a lightning bolt through my body, and I am shown an exact visual of who I was in this past life. And I am just, it feels like I'm tossed to the ground, right? Like I'm not in control of my body, I'm just sobbing. I'm in fetal position. I've never cried so hard my whole entire life. So I start Wikipediaing this person and looking into it, and I'm feeling just sick to my stomach. I'm like, this can't be true. I'm going crazy. I'm psychotic. What are my friends, what are my family gonna think? So I put it on hold. I put it all in a box, and I said, okay, deal with this later. Same thing with the experience back at the music festival. Until I had my first ayahuasca experience, when the floodgates were open, my third eye was just wrenched open, bright white lights were just blistering. I mean, I couldn't look away. It was, things in my hand were turning into swords. I was just like plunged back into the depths of this life, and then being shown all the intervening lives and what does it mean for this life in Ethan, and how is he supposed to share his story and explain what's going on in the world. And it was just the most important few hours of my entire existence. It explained everything up until this point. So that was kind of the broad overview, and things are still unfolding. What I've come to understand is that I have a few more years before the metamorphosis is complete, so to speak. And I've since given up all drugs in general. So that includes caffeine, marijuana, psychedelics, alcohol, vegan, and gluten-free. All of, because what's happening in my body is my like, I need more energy. Like, if I treat my body like shit, this Kundalini force it's like pushing through magma as opposed to like a really viscous liquid. Like, what I want, or what any of us should want, is to be extremely light, like less dense, so that this thing can actually change our energetic system. And without it, it's a really, really challenging process. I mean, imagine if you just have a river that's impeded by a bunch of dams all along the way. It's like, if you keep putting dams in your body, if you keep ingesting certain chemicals, then you're just continuing to place the dams, and the energy has to boom, 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 like try to make it through, and it makes the experience way more unpleasant. Versus if you just give up the junk, if you just give up the crap and surrender to the process and just say like, okay, let's see what's on the other side of this whole thing. Then all of a sudden everything will just kind of flow much easier, and you won't have those moments where, when I was talking about earlier, where I'm like seizing up and it feels like I'm vomiting out of my head and things are uncontrollable. I'm being doubled at my waist and it's really uncomfortable, and it's like this painful orgasm that won't stop for 20 minutes. All of those things go away when you start taking control of your diet and what you are ingesting into your body and what you are ingesting into your mind. So media consumption as well. So the suggestions I have really is to eat far more fruits and vegetables, things that are made of light or closer to the light source. This will basically unblock your system and allow energy to flow head to toe, toe to head. Beyond food, you can also take things into your hand by improving your posture. Now remember, Kundalini is an energy in your spine, and so anytime you're actually curled down on yourself, which is a fear response, right? You can imagine the fetal position is what happens when we're protecting our body. So this is us going beyond fear and opening ourselves up to whatever it has to be shown to us. And the second that all humanity can actually allow it in and allow this resurrection process, this Christ energy to actually flood through the body, things will change on planet Earth overnight. So again, the reason why this is important and why you might want to understand about Kundalini at all is because it is happening to you. It is happening to your body right now. Things are shifting in you, and this resistance you have to the awakening process is actually making things much more challenging for yourself. Anyways, reach out with any questions or type in the comments what you thought, and if you're having some sort of Kundalini experience or experiences. If you're interested, you can also sign up for a free discovery session with me. It's about 15 minutes, and we just go through a few questions to see how I can actually be of service to you. That is what I'm here to do. I am going through this process a little bit earlier, a little bit rockier, so that I can help spread the word and be able to explain on both a logical and experiential level what the hell is going on with the collective right now. Thank you for your presence. Peace on your journey, and we'll be in touch. Bye.